Final round.
Power.
Nice shot.
KO.
Welcome to Gaymer Girls.
Welcome to
Gaymer Girls,
the gaming podcast full of nerd news and lore lectures for the girls and the gamers.
Gamers.
I'm Sana.
I'm Van.
And I wouldn't call it a fun topic.
No,
Today.
but it's one that I am very much looking forward to hearing you talk about. It's rather relevant.
Originally, when I started writing this episode, it was the end of December, beginning of January.
For context, it is January 30th, 2025, as of right now, when we are recording.
So the inauguration has happened, and there have been a lot of sweeping executive orders that very specifically target people who identify as transgender, non-binary, and no doubt we will see more of that to come in the future as more and more executive orders are signed that specifically go after people who are in the queer community and the LGBTQ plus community.
And it doesn't quite stop there. Even we're seeing rollbacks and attempts to freeze DEI across the board, which is, does encompass a lot. That's what, when people think DEI, they tend to think queer, trans, but that goes much further than that. It's about a lot of women in general and socioeconomic status and your physical abilities. And
exactly.
So much can be encompassed there. But in our circles of the internet, we're seeing it very much affect the LGBT community.
Exactly. So this episode, funny enough, draws a lot of parallels to what's going on right now, even though we're going to be doing a little blast to the past about 10 years ago, discussing some events that have happened that really shaped a lot of this. This is by no means a recent sort of event that has been happening, but we have definitely seen as conservatism has become more and more popular, as right-wing views have become more and more popular. There has been more of a resurgence of that type of content on social platforms when it comes to discussing video games. Now, this is not a new thing for video games, but I definitely have noticed a spike with, Trump's campaign and censoring white men and how that has sort of bolstered a lot of this woke gamer ideology that I'm seeing, where people are calling out games as woke for just including even the most base type of representation, not even games going out of their way to having queer characters or trans characters, but just games that include women in general.
And a diverse view of women and I think the most recent large game release in the last couple of years, Baldur's Gate 3, received flack for having different genitalia options, but also for having NPCs that are not conventionally attractive, non-romanceable NPCs. And I think we're seeing across the board where people, particularly the sort of, it's not just conservatives, it's more of a right-wing ideology found in these commentary spheres where they want, quote, return to traditional female characters. We're seeing this across the board. I mean, trad wife content at the moment is really big, so it's across a lot of social media platforms, but in video games, there's been a distinct uptick.
The funny thing about Baldur's Gate 3 as well is how when it released, it obviously got all this hate for having this diversity, but as soon as it got award after award after award, we started to see a lot of that commentary and criticism disappear, because go woke, go broke as an idea doesn't work when you are criticizing something that is critically acclaimed, that is gaining a lot of awards, that has a lot of diversity in it. We also saw this with Disco Elysium, which I don't know if you played Disco Elysium.
I've heard vaguely about it, but I know that there was a lot going on in the news.
Yeah, but Disco Elysium is a critically acclaimed game, but there's a lot of themes of communism and socialism in there. So, I mean, granted, you can also play a racist asshole, but like it was one of those games that has a lot of political diversity and a lot of very leftist leaning political viewpoints because it is an RPG, so you can pick you can sort of role play and pick what sort of political view you want, and there's achievements based on how many communist dialogue options you picked and stuff. That's
kind of fun as someone who loves to watch like speedrunners on YouTube get like the people who do like achievement runs where they try and 100% everything. Yeah. So, but Disco Elysium very similarly gets a lot of, doesn't gain as much criticism. It got so many awards and it has so much critical acclaim. And just to jump off that, I first heard that phrase around the release of, and this is a movie, but the Black Panther is the very first time I heard people complaining. It's like, okay, go woke, go broke. Like, do we really need like the a story surrounding a black superhero? Like, come on. I heard a lot of that narrative in online spaces, and then it comes out and it's a massive hit. It's economically so incredibly successful because it hits for the audiences that have never had that kind of distinct representation before. And over and over and over again, time and again, we are seeing that be proven true, that go woke, go broke truly does not qualify anymore. Yeah, but despite it having no logical sense, and as we see in a lot of these right-wing spaces, a lot of these opinions aren't derived by logic and therefore will not be debunked by logic. So to go back to late 2024 at the Game Awards, there were many announcements that night, but two stood out, at least when it came to this woke game discourse that was going on online after the awards. The two were Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, developed by Naughty Dog, and The Witcher 4, of course, which is from CD Projekt Red, which is the long-awaited sequel to the 2015 Game Awards Game of the Year winner, The Witcher 3. Oh, wow. Yeah. So both games have a female lead, which is not unique on its own when it comes to games. Many games have had female characters, whether they be playable or like a primary protagonist. We have, of course, most notably Lara Croft in Tomb Raider in the Tomb Raider series, Terra in Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy 3, depending on what console you were playing on, and of course Zelda in The Legend of Zelda. Like, women have been in games, they have always been in games. There's never been a singular one form of representation of how women exist in games. And there's also a whole history of games for girls that can be an episode on its own. But there are incredible video essays out there that are specifically about games for girls that are incredibly well researched that I definitely recommend you check out. But games that are marketed towards women and girls are also not new. Women have been in games from the start, whether they be players, characters, or developers. With the internet, social media, and forums, there has always been a small but vocal group of gamers that exist only to complain about women and diversity in games. So now we're going to go back a bit more. Okay. We're going to go back 10 years to 2014 when there was Gamergate, which I have not heard about. In fact, you asked me if I had heard about Gamergate, and I was like, no, but I can do some research if you want before an episode. I said, please don't. I said, please do no research, because I need to have your genuine reaction to learning about this for the first time. And here I am. I'm ready for it. Or maybe I'm not. Whatever you are mentally prepared for, it is more than that. So in 2014, I had not gotten into games yet outside of online games, coolmathforkids.com. And I also wasn't on any of the social media sites that Gamergate was really blowing up on, like Twitter, 4chan, 8chan. No, we were 14, I think. I mean, there's no reason why 14. I wasn't even on Tumblr at that point. I think the most I had was an Instagram and a Snapchat that was just between me and my middle school friends. I was on Google Plus, and I forgot about Google Plus. I ran a fairly successful Harry Potter fan page.
Oh,
to
wow.
Be honest. Yeah.
Some things just don't age well.
No. No, they don't.
Especially talking about this today. So Gamergate was an online movement that only existed to spread hate, misogyny, alt-right messaging, doxing, and racism to women in the gaming sphere as well as their critics.
Doxing as well?
Also, I should say content warning.
Okay.
There's a lot of very serious topics that we're going to talk about here. Granted, I am only going to give a condensed history of Gamergate because it was really like a 3-4 year span of events. Granted, there was a curve, there was a
climax and a denouement.
Exactly. So it wasn't consistent over that timeline, but definitely there were events, but there were spikes, especially at the beginning. Please keep in mind that topics like doxing, harassment, sexual harassment, death threats, if that type of content is upsetting to you.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Exactly.
That is no problem.
It's no problem, but please keep that in mind. So Gamergate is an example of what happens when an army of men on 4chan decide to make someone the target of their harassment. Don't know if you can 100% talk about what's going on right now without discussing what happened 10 years ago, which is why I'm addressing it. Please keep in mind, if you are listening to this and you are familiar with the events of Gamergate, I am not going to include every person, entity, or event that was involved in this because it's simply too much. This is your crash course version of the events.
I'm ready, John Green. Hit me with it.
So Gamergate started in August of 2014 when Zoe Quinn, and I should mention Zoe Quinn now goes by they, them pronouns. They did not back then, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to refer to them by their current pronouns.
Great.
Zoe Quinn published a free text-based game called Depression Quest, which was an educational game about what it was like to experience depression. It was free. It was very much a donate what you want if you would like, but it was a text-based game that took you through the mind of what it was like to have depression.
That's unique.
Yeah, so it was one of those games for impact type games. It
Sure.
was made to be educational. It was not made for profit.
Got it.
An ex-partner of theirs posted a 10,000 word diatribe saying all these terrible claims about Zoe and their relationship. I did not read the post because for the sake of this conversation, what happened in their relationship does not matter, and I will not be commenting on it.
Okay.
However, I will note that Zoe's ex-partner did eventually edit his blog to disprove the claims he made, chalking them up as being a typo. Though the blog post was taken down on the original website it was posted on, it eventually was reposted on WordPress, and from there, it made its way to 4chan. Because we all know if it blows up on 4chan, it's definitely an innocent, wholesome thing that won't cause harm to anyone.
4chan is in fact the best social media. I don't know what you're talking about. It's so pure.
No, that's 8chan.
To be fair, I have not gone down that 4chan, 8chan rabbit hole. I do understand that many manifesto. I have an interest in reading people's manifestos and understanding the minds of people who've done terrible acts. And a lot of that stuff you find on 4chan, and I've heard of 8chan, but a lot of it kind of got migrated over, I think. Yeah,
so I also have not, but that's also because I don't need to go down a hellhole. That's not something I need. Yeah.
We already have to do that pretty much every day on our regular social media.
Yeah.
So,
let alone the wastelands of the internet. So
right.
The way that this whole situation is justified in the minds of the people on 4chan and later 8chan and IRCs is basically, we care about the integrity of gaming journalism, which is absolutely false. Yeah, exactly. They claim, in short, that Zoe dated a gaming journalist whose name is mentioned in the diatribe in the blog post that their ex published, and did so in order to get a positive review of their game. It's integral to note there was no review of Depression Quest written by this game journalist. Of course, we can sit here and say, wow, it's so illogical. How could you think that? But beliefs that don't sprout from logic won't be debunked by logic.
I really like the way you phrased that.
It's really the core of the right-wing playbook. You can also see a lot of right-wing playbook stuff in Gamergate and how these people justify their actions, and it really is gross. So over the next 2 weeks, and yes, this mostly happens over 2 weeks, this situation explodes. Zoe Quinn became the target of harassment and doxing alongside Anita Sarkeesian, who was already someone that 4chan harassed back in 2012 when she was developing a YouTube series called Tropes versus Women in Video Games, which is, by the way, a really great series. There's 2 seasons of it on YouTube, on the Feminist Frequency YouTube channel. It's very well researched and very well produced.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. She had just posted the episode Women as Background Decorations Part 2 around this time in August of 2014. And so Gamergate was like, we already hate her, we're looping her in. These 2 people are not related by any means. They were just both people in games that 4chan users decided to target for their harassment.
Great.
So much so that they both had to leave their homes in fear for their safety.
Wow.
Also, the movement moved over to 8chan since 4chan started moderating all the doxing because,
Yeah, you should moderate doxing.
Yeah. But then at that point, it moved over to 8chan.
Great.
By this point, several gaming publications like Polygon, Kotaku, Gamasutra, now known as Game Developer, and others posted articles about the whole situation, calling out the behavior. The journalists who wrote these articles, as well as the publications themselves, became targets. Gamergate launched an email campaign at the end of August trying to cut off revenue of any publication critical to them.
Wow.
Because, of course, this is all about the integrity of gaming journalism.
Oh, because we care so much.
Yeah, because that's definitely what this is about. This continues into October. Alt-right figures like Milo Yiannopoulos have gotten involved. Anita was supposed to speak at the University of Utah, but her talk got canceled after death threats were made against her if she decided to go speak. Wow. At the end of October, Anita appears on the Colbert Report, and of course both of them poke fun at this whole situation because it's
Colbert is good at diffusing that kind of tension,
which is exactly why you saw a lessening of the spike after this Colbert Report episode drops. An auto blocker was released on Twitter by Randy Harper that basically blocks all accounts that are following a certain number of big right-wing Gamergate accounts. And this blocker was actually genius because it targeted, I believe, 4 or 5 people who were really in the leaders of the right-wing Gamergate movement, and said, hey, if this account is following at least 2 out of these 5 people, block them. And it actually got rid of most of the accounts associated with it. It was
that's innovative though.
Yeah. But of course, Randy Harper got hate too. There continues to be doxing, harassment, and hate towards various women in games, gaming journalism publishers that are critical of the movement, and also towards studios that decide to take more inclusive approach on their game's characters and portrayal. So by 2017, Gamergate had lost its steam, though it hasn't existed with the same momentum it had in late 2014. There are still remnants of it that exist today, whether Gamergate is actually used as a name to identify the people involved or not.
Okay, so now it's sort of a moniker for that type of harassment and the people involved.
I would say that a lot of times when people allude to or refer to things as being a part of Gamergate now, it's definitely more alluding to the events back then. But you don't see... But as far as Gamergate as an online harassment campaign, it basically ended around 2017, 2018, and we don't really see much else happening today.
Good.
But there are definitely people and movements and groups that emulate a lot of that nowadays in the present.
Good.
Yeah. So this group, whether they call themselves Gamergate or something else, are people who will do everything they can to spread hate and even go as far as harass and dox women in the gaming space. I say women, but I think also people who belong to the queer community, people who are not white, basically anybody who would be considered to be a part of a marginalized group would be lumped into this. So in the past few years, there have been more and more, I feel, hate that comes towards female characters in games, though this might also just feel like it's amplified because of how much the internet has grown, and also how much many of our social platforms have started to lean right-wing.
And that may or may not be due to the literal platform itself boosting that kind of content.
Specifically when it comes to games where the character models lean more towards realistic versus stylized, we see a lot of this. So like the games that characters are very like anime stylized to be attractive tend to get less hate than the ones where women are, there's a female character but it's a very realistic style, so they just look like a person.
They just look like a woman.
They just look like a normal woman. Not to say that, because there's nothing wrong with stylized games.
Yeah.
But like, that's not how people look like
in real life.
Yeah. So when games that take a more realistic approach to their art direction have a female character, they get a bunch of hate because these men point at it and they go, well, why can't this person have big titties and like a tiny nose and like a perfect bod
and a waist that just is physically cannot hold in their internal organs?
Exactly.
Which always gets me.
And I saw a lot of this hate with Alloy when Horizon Forbidden West was announced. We saw this hate when The Last of Us Part 2 was released and Laura Bailey, the actress behind Abby, was getting death threats both against herself and her son. This year, before the Game Awards, it almost felt like every AAA game announcement was either called woke or had negative comments made about their appearance. I saw it with Dragon Age The Veilguard, with several of the female companions in the game, though that game also had a lot of transphobic comments made about it, in addition to the quote-unquote yassified edits of some of the game's characters.
Oh no, are they trying to make them look like how they want them to look?
Face tune these characters.
With like the lashes and like the glossy airbrushed skin.
Exactly. We saw this with The Ghost of Yotai, with insults made towards Erika Ishii, the actor who plays the protagonist, due to them being queer and an outspoken ally of the LGBT community, as someone who identifies, uses all pronouns, identifies as gender queer, yes.
Yeah. They're constantly.
Assassin's Creed Shadow got a lot of hate for having one of the main characters you play being a black samurai, even though he is based off of a actual black samurai who existed in history.
Yeah, there's a lot of animes that get that flack as well, because they will feature a black samurai.
Now with The Witcher 4, Ciri's face is being picked apart, as well as her status as a witcher, even though that is one of the endings of the DLC. If you played the game, it makes sense why she's a witcher. But obviously these people don't care.
No, they'll find any reason to tear apart these characters.
And large conservative streamers are making bigoted comments about Jordan, the protagonist of Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, played by Tati Gabrielle. Jordan is the character I have probably seen the most amount of hate directed towards, with posts comparing her to Stellar Blaze protagonist Eve, who has a very stylized appearance and giant tits.
That's just the one thing they always go for. And then I feel like none of these people have ever considered the amount of back pain that these characters would be in.
I know. But also, like, Tati Gabrielle, she is beautiful. I mean,
and her voice is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't have long hair, and the character she is playing in the game has a very close shaven head, but she is still like conventionally beautiful.
Yes.
Yet these people still will find any sort of way to criticize her,
because
and
she has perhaps a less conventional style and she's a black woman. Or
yes, exactly. Most recently, Doom: The Dark Age, which, if you're familiar with the Doom series, is probably the most masculine
I am unfamiliar, but
big armored guy shoot aliens.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doom the Dark Age got announced and is now being stupidly dubbed Doom the Woke Age, and is getting the same hate after a still shot of a female character from the game made its round on socials. People are upset that this female character isn't attractive enough, while others are complaining that there is a woman in their Doom game to begin with.
Really?
Yeah, obviously none of this makes sense because it's stupid.
It really is. And like, if you want games where gender is truly, or you don't want a woman in your games, I think there are 1,000 out there that you can pick from.
Oh yeah.
If you want to play a first-person shooter that has minimal female-like appearances, doesn't most of Call of Duty focus on male characters and voice lines? And you don't, like, gender doesn't matter in the game. You can pick a male main character if you want to pick a male main character.
One of the big things that a lot of these right-wing grifters will very conveniently ignore is you control the buttons you press. If you do not want to play an androgynous character and there's a character creator,
you do not have to play it.
Just don't make that your character. And you're not interested in playing a trans character or an androgynous appearing character. If you want to appear very feminine or very masculine, you can do that. It's not...
No one's going to cancel you for wanting to play a man.
Exactly. I played Dragon Age Veilguard and I picked a very feminine presenting character because that's what I felt like wanting to play. You know, I chose the longest hair. I brought the tit slider as far as I could.
There's a tit slider?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot because obviously it's a custom model, so if it's too much, it's going to start clipping.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I made a more feminine presenting character because I look more feminine, so...
And you want to see yourself in the games.
Yeah, exactly. So in that case, I didn't pick to have top surgery scars. I have trans friends who played the game or just downloaded because you can download the character creator separately for free if you'd like, who played around the character creator and designed a character that had top surgery scars, that had gender neutral pronouns. I have had friends who identify as non-binary and chose to have their character be trans in the game and have those dialogue options made available to them because that's what they wanted to do. But I didn't choose that because we all picked the buttons we press.
It's so funny to me that people are throwing, you know, their fists in the air and they're so angry about all this. So I've got about 5 different Baldur's Gate characters, if not 6. And I have such a fun time playing around with all different ones.
Yeah.
I have very feminine cis women on there. I've got people where I'm mix and matching genitalia.
Yeah.
I'm using they, them pronouns for some of them with incredibly deep voices and very feminine bodily characteristics. Because it's a video game, it's fantasy, it's fun, it's whatever I want to make it. It's so frustrating to see these people blowing up online when you can choose what you want to do.
Yeah.
These game devs are not making you trans.
I think it's really upsetting to see a lot, and I believe part of this is because a lot of these social media sites, especially Twitter, I'm not calling it X, especially Twitter, because of the way that the algorithm has now been created, it incentivizes engagement bait, rage bait, posts that very specifically make people angry. So you see a lot of people moving over to being a right-wing grifter because they get more engagement on their posts, which means if they're subscribed to Twitter Blue, then they get money for it. It's stupid. It's idiotic.
But you see that all over. I mean, TikTok, ever since the ban, people are also saying like they're having a lot of different content pushed towards their feeds, and you're seeing that a lot of the viral videos are videos that just make people pure angry, and it's the content creators are intentionally capitalizing upon that. So you see a lot of these, particularly women who are catering to the conservative male gaze. And there's a number of creators, I'm not going to call them out just because I don't want to give them any more viewership.
Yeah.
But they're intentionally throwing things out there saying the keywords and the buzzwords and the phrases that will anger women in particular, and that drives up their content, and then it's pushed even more into that conservative sphere, and they're lauded for it in the conservative circles, but it's all for engagement.
It's very disheartening to see people who look at maybe one trailer from a game and then decide, oh, this is going to be terrible. I saw posts after the Witcher 4 trailer was released during the Game Awards that said that if Witcher 4 fails, it's going to be because of Siri.
That discounts the work that was put into the rest of the game, the amount of pure man hours that goes into the creation of a game like that.
And CD Projekt Red is an incredible studio who has an incredible track record of games, whether it be, of course, we go back to what we talked about in the beginning of the episode where go woke, go broke doesn't work. Very notably, Cyberpunk 2077 lets you choose what genitalia you have.
And it's incredibly successful.
And people don't complain about it, because why would you complain about a game that everyone agrees is really good?
I feel bad for them that they're not allowing themselves to enjoy these critically renowned and fulfilling experiences purely because of a preset ideological difference, I think, and the preset sort of hatred that lies deep within their hearts that they've either been indoctrinated into, which I do feel that a lot of hatred is all indoctrination. Yeah. It is about the environment that you're growing up into and the environment that you put yourself into online, though there are proven intensively researched videos and studies that are showing that online content does in fact try and turn you a little bit more conservative. There's a video that I watched where someone was going through Instagram Reels until it turned them conservative, and I saw that with TikTok too.
Yes. How much can you scroll on TikTok before it starts getting right wing? Absolutely.
And so unless you really take care to cultivate your own personal space online and follow people with diverse mindsets, you're really cutting yourself off from good content and interesting content that may challenge your views. But it makes me sad for these people who are not going to get to experience these fantastic stories and open themselves up to these perspectives purely because of these preset notions.
I almost feel bad for these people because there's so many incredible stories out there, so many incredible stories that are specifically in games that you're just cutting yourself off from because you don't want to give another perspective or a game with a diverse cast the time of day.
And it's also such a small part of the game. Yeah. Again, my main reference is Baldur's Gate when it comes to the outcry that happened online. And the character creator bit is after the first cutscenes that you get, you make your character, and then it truly is never referenced again except for the sex scenes that you choose and your voice lines that you hear over and over again. So just pick what you want to end up seeing. You don't have to romance people. You don't have to be involved in any of that. Yeah. All it does is tell the actual game coding what to call you and how you appear on screen. It's a minuscule part of a massive, massive story. You can play, and I have played hundreds of hours and still not finished the dang game.
I'm still gonna...
I know. Yeah. Sana put out an ultimatum that if I want to write the Baldur's Gate episode, which I really want to write a Baldur's Gate episode that sort of encompasses the first two games and this one, I have to actually finish this one first. Yeah. And I will. One of my 5 playing throughs, I will finish, I promise.
Just to sort of, end on hopefully a positive note, we have seen since 2014, since Gamergate, just since the start of games, more and more diverse representation that has occurred in games. And that is always a good thing. Diverse representation is never going to tank your game. As we've seen time and time again, every award season, whether it be the Game Awards, Golden Joystick, everything, the BAFTAs,
Yeah.
Every year you see that the games that are getting awarded are ones that really champion a lot of these themes. I mean, when we get to the Elden Ring episode, we'll talk about how much gender fluidity there is in Elden Ring.
I had no idea.
Well, it's complicated.
Okay, we'll get into it. We'll save
like
it.
a lot of stuff, Elden Ring won Game of the year before Baldur's Gate 3, and very notably, one of the main characters of the game has a male persona.
Very cool. And going and looking at games in history as well, in The Legend of Zelda, but there are multiple instances of Link who has to disguise himself as a woman and gets to enjoy the process of dressing up as a woman. You get to collect the clothes and things, and that there's an aspect of queering gender there.
Oh, and yeah, Cloud in Final Fantasy VII, the whole honeybee scene where he has to dress up as a woman to get into a mafia boss's bedroom.
And it's not the butt of a joke. Having to dress up and disguise yourself in this way isn't making fun of trans people or people who enjoy cross-dressing or anything like that. It is a tool and an aspect of the story that you are following through and that is taken seriously in the game and that you can have fun with. And you see that way back when. It's so frustrating that it feels we are going back in time in terms of the response to this content.
Yeah.
I think this topic in general is just important to address. So thank you for bringing it up.
Of course. And I've noticed, I guess, as we get farther from 2014, there's less and less people who are aware of what happened back then, especially with like newer generations who weren't on the social media sites where a lot of this occurred. So it's important to talk about because you really do see a lot of the parallels happening today. But as you're going forward, playing the games you love, perhaps trying out new games, always remember to champion these stories, the stories that take risks, the stories that shine a light in places that don't always get the light shown on.
And playing them is exactly how you do that. That's exactly how you show their parent companies and the game devs and the broader world that this is something we need and want to see more of by simply playing the game and enjoying the content.
Exactly. And also, don't react to the people who are spreading the hate because you're only adding more fuel to the fire. These people do not deserve any of the platform that they have.
Your attention and your time is incredibly valuable. It is making other people money. Your attention on screens is making someone a profit. So it is very important that we intentionally designate that time and that attention and that emotional energy into something that is beneficial.
Exactly. And I think that's the high point we should end on.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to everybody who listened.
Thank you, Sana, for running me through Gamergate. I had not heard of it, and I am very glad that it is something, hopefully, that will stay in the past.
Exactly. And we'll see you all next week.
All right. Bye.